Hey folks, hope you're well. Szeto here. Today we're talking windows and doors for the cabin and stuff like that. So for this particular A-frame, what we're doing is essentially 4 windows in the front, one of which is actually embedded inside the door. And then we've got one big 4x4 that's actually going in the back. The one in the back is the only new window. Everything from the front was actually from the Habitat for Humanity restore. And yeah, it's exciting. So in this particular episode, we're gonna essentially refit out every single window, frame them and everything like that, put them into place. And yeah, essentially we're making Plywood McPlyface into a full, front end of an A-frame and stuff. So this is a pretty exciting episode. And yeah, here are essentially the details of how we went and did that. Hope you enjoy. So for the windows and doors for this particular build, as we mentioned, everything except for the 4x4 window in the back was actually a used window from what you see here, which is the Habitat for Humanity restore. The door was actually $50, and the 3 other windows were actually all $45 each when I just found them essentially walking up and down the aisle. And actually all 4 windows in the front are actually the exact same size. For the bigger 4x4 window on the back, actually, it was essentially just walking through Home Depot where we saw this 4x4, and it was essentially on sale for $200, which is a pretty good steal, and why we went with that particular window. So with all the windows and doors bought, we actually scoured through Instagram to take a look for inspiration, and this is essentially what we were trying to go after. Of course, ours is much tighter of a face in the front there, so you had to be creative. The windows, unfortunately, the 2 side windows had to go a bit lower. It would have been nice to have had them all on the same plane, but they would have cut into the rafters, and the rafters are essentially, our main support on this particular build as well. So we'll start off at the front of the building. Essentially all the windows that were bought for the front were actually meant to fit things. So it was meant to fit doors and things like that. You can kind of see, the flanges that came with those particular windows. So what we actually ended up having to do was actually fabricate frames for them. And we did that in the warmth of the Ottawa City wood shop. We're essentially able to buy pine and then also cedar for all the trimmings and things like that. That would be the exterior and stuff. Once all the frames essentially were built for the 24x38 windows there, we put in a wood strip inside the frame that essentially that flange on the window would essentially fitted to. And then we also, of course, nailed the exterior cedar to the frame there. Once we had essentially had the frame together, we would take the window apart by unscrewing the flange. We would then add the necessary weather stripping and silicone to the backside of the flange there, then close it all together on that strip there as mentioned, and then we'd silicone on the front up by the frame there as well. And once we essentially had this prepared for all 3 of the windows, we were ready to install them on site, which is pretty exciting. So next step was actually putting, of course, the windows and doors on the site and everything like that. That was done by using 2x6 framing that we would essentially frame around the frames for the windows that we fabricated in the wood shop, and also around the door frame that came with the door when we purchased it. For the 2x6s themselves, we would have a header. The headers would essentially tie to the rafters, and or if it were a window, the header for the windows would tie to a rafter and also the side of the door frame itself there. So essentially what we did was we would fit 2x6s to the approximate sizes. We would actually give ourselves a 3/4 inch buffer just so that things would fit well. We would also have room to insulate around the framing of the window to the 2x6 framing that we fabricated there. So once framed out, we would actually use the circular saw and cut out the approximate shape of it. Of course, they were approximate, so we would then take the windows and door frames themselves, and dry fit them just to make sure that things were going to work out. And once we saw that things were fitting pretty well, we would take them out. We would actually apply blue skin. Blue skin was kind of like the water sealant protector there that we would glue to the 2x6s extending out to the plywood. And we would staple it down just because it was pretty cold to install during this time of the year. So we ensured that we had blue skin pretty much everywhere, on all 4 edges there. And then from there, we siliconed actually around the 2 edges and also along the top there of blue skin. And allowing the bottom so that we don't have any moisture trapped in the bottom. We would then with silicone put in the window frame into place, and we would essentially have a window installed. Of course, we would check for level, and once level, we would then drill into the 2x6 frame that we had built around for it. And yeah, things were essentially looking good, and we essentially had either installed doors or windows. So that was pretty exciting there. We essentially, also for the backside, because there was one window, we essentially repeated that particular process, and we got that massive 4x4 into the back, which is pretty sweet. Pretty mellow process, and fortunately we didn't actually have to fabricate a window frame for the back there. It was actually, came with a pretty significant frame, and we were able to just throw it on 2x6s, and away we went there. One last thing was that the door didn't come with an updated key set. I didn't actually have any keys for the door that I bought, so we actually ended up buying this Wiser kit. It was pretty self-explanatory, just read the instructions on site, threw in the locking set, and yeah, it was exciting. We essentially had a door that became lockable, and yeah, basically started to look much more like a home. Again, it was no longer plywood McPlyface, so that was kind of exciting. And yeah, that was essentially that part there. So anyhow, that was a quick run through of what we sort of did there with the doors and windows. If there's anything that anyone caught that you think, isn't quite up to snuff or anything like that, please feel free to let us know. It's honestly one of those things that these doors and windows, I think, add a lot of character to what your A-frame looks like. It really kind of defines what it looks like. So that's kind of, to me, a really exciting time, a really exciting moment. Coming up next, we've actually Tyvek'd the place. I Tyvek'd the place, and so I'll put a piece out on that alongside some of the other things that go down. But coming up next will really be cedar shaking the place, and I think that's going to really have that full exterior look, essentially, of what it's going to look like for the next 40 to 50 years, let's hope, of what this place will look like. So yeah, that'll be coming up next in this particular build, and wish me luck. Hope things go well. Anyhow, appreciate it, and more to come. Take care. Peace.